Before Macy's, your city had its own department store, its own name on the building. And when they took that name down, people cried in the street. Detroit called theirs Hudson's. Philadelphia called theirs Wanamakers. Chicago had Marshall Field's. Pittsburgh had Kaufmann's. Miami had Burdines. One company bought them all and put the same name on every building in every city. This is what they erased. In Detroit, they called it Hudson's. J.L. Hudson's on Woodward Avenue was not just a store. It was a monument, 32 stories. For a time, the tallest department store building in the world. More than 200 departments. When you stepped inside, you looked up. You couldn't help it, and the ceilings disappeared somewhere above you into chandeliers and light. It smelled like perfume and fresh popcorn and hot chocolate all at once. That was the smell of walking in. Your eyes hadn't even adjusted yet, and your nose already knew where you were. Detroit children grew up knowing that if you ever got lost downtown, you went to Hudson's. You found a salesperson in a white glove, and you said you were lost, and they would take care of you. That was the promise the store made to the city. At Thanksgiving, Hudson's sponsored the parade. The whole city watched. Your dad took you to the sidewalk, and then inside to ride the escalators and get hot dogs in the basement. At Christmas, the express elevator carried you and your mother and your good shoes straight up to the 12th floor to see Santa. Not any Santa, the Hudson Santa, the one who had been there as long as anyone could remember. On the building's face, they would hang the American flag, not a flag. The flag. It covered 7 stories. When it unfurled in the November wind, people stopped on Woodward Avenue and looked up and felt something they didn't have a word for. Something like pride in a place. Something like belonging to something larger than yourself. There was a restaurant on one of the upper floors where they served a salad, the Maurice salad, and your mother knew the recipe by heart and made it at home, but it was never quite the same as the one they made at Hudson's. That's how it was with department store food. It tasted like the place. It tasted like being taken care of. In Philadelphia, the store was Wanamaker's. John Wanamaker opened it in 1876. By the time you were old enough to walk its floors, Wanamaker's had been there longer than anyone's grandparents, longer than the electric light, longer than the automobile. It was older than almost everything in the city, except the city itself. The Grand Court was the center. Marble, columns, light coming down from above in the way that light comes down in cathedrals. At one end, the largest pipe organ in the world, the Grand Court organ, built for the 1904 World's Fair and brought to Philadelphia by Wanamaker himself. At noon, someone sat down at that organ and played. Not background music, real music. You could hear it echoing through the atrium while your mother shopped. It made the whole store feel like a cathedral. And there was the eagle, a bronze eagle, standing in the middle of the Grand Court. Every Philadelphian knew it. You didn't say, "Meet me at Wanamaker's." You said, "Meet me at the Eagle." You could hear heels clicking on that marble floor before you saw the person you were meeting. Generations of couples found each other under that bird. First dates and anniversary lunches and grandmothers and grandchildren. The Eagle was the meeting place of an entire city. Your grandmother always took you to see the light show and the Eagle, then lunch in the crystal tea room on the 8th floor, under chandeliers. Ladies of Philadelphia had been eating there since before World War I. The menu was not fancy. It was precise. It was exactly what it had always been. And that constancy, that sense of a place that knew what it was and intended to keep being it, that was the point. In Chicago, it was Marshall Field's. You went downtown and there was the clock. A large green clock hanging over State Street, visible from half a block away. Every Chicagoan knew that clock. Mothers told their children, "If you get lost, go to Marshall Field's. Stand under the green clock. I will find you." 153 years of history lived in that building. Marshall Field himself had rebuilt it after the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. While the city was still smoldering, he was already reopening. The store's motto was simple: "Give the lady what she wants." That phrase came from Field himself, who caught a manager arguing with a customer over a return. He stopped them both. "That's not how we do things here." The Walnut Room on the 7th floor served lunch under a 45-foot Christmas tree. Every December, every year. Your mom took you to see the tree, and getting hot cocoa there felt like the fanciest thing in the world. Chicago families built their entire holiday around it. The drive downtown, the walk through the Christmas windows on State Street, the wait for a table, the tree above you while you ate. It was a ritual, not a luxury. A thing your family did together because it was the thing your family did. In the kitchen below, they made Frango mints, a chocolate truffle specific to that store and to that city. You could not buy them anywhere else. Chicago took things like that personally. Marshall Field's wasn't just a store, it was Chicago's. People went there to feel like they lived in a real city. In Atlanta, there was Rich's. In Miami, Burdines, the Florida store. Your mother took you there for school clothes, and then you would get little sandwiches at the lunch counter. It smelled like new clothes and French fries. The Hibiscus Tea Room had a dessert called the Snow Princess, a skirt of ice cream and whipped cream and silver balls with a porcelain doll on top. You could only get it there in Miami, at Burdines. Your grandmother ordered it every time. In Pittsburgh, Kaufmann's. There was a clock at Kaufmann's too. The Kaufmann's clock on Fifth Avenue, which was the meeting spot of the city, the way the Eagle was in Philadelphia, and the Green Clock was in Chicago. Every Christmas you went downtown to see the Kaufmann's windows with your grandmother. She would be dressed up. You would end the day with hot chocolate in the restaurant on the top floor. The gift wrap counter had thick, glossy paper and real cloth ribbons, not the cheap stuff. You could feel how fancy it was. In Columbus, Lazarus. In Boston, Filene's, whose basement pioneered the automatic markdown, and where Filene's basement runs were a whole family sport. Your aunt with her stack of coupons, your mom elbow deep in the racks, you hiding in the clothing rounds. In Minneapolis, Dayton's. In Houston, Foley's. In Seattle, the Bon Marche. In Portland, Meyer and Frank. In St. Louis, Famous Bar. Every city had its own name, its own clock, its own restaurant, its own smell. Every city had a place that was specifically, pointedly, unmistakably its own. Department store escalators were not like other escalators. They were open. You could see the moving steps from across the floor. A kind of slow mechanical waterfall carrying people from one world to another. The sound was specific, the grind and clunk of the steps folding flat at the top, the handrail moving just slightly faster than your hand wanted it to. If you were a child, you watched your feet. You timed it. You stepped on at exactly the right moment, and the machine carried you upward, and for those 15 seconds, you were neither on one floor nor the next. You were somewhere between. The elevator operators had a different gravity to them. Most large department stores kept human operators in the elevators well into the 1970s. They wore uniforms. They called the floors. Second floor, ladies' coats and accessories. Third floor, men's clothing and sporting goods. The elevator doors were the old-fashioned kind, a metal gate that the operator pulled across before the outer doors closed. That clack of the old metal gate, the ding of every floor, those sounds were specific to that moment, in that building, in that city. You can hear them if you think about it hard enough. Your charge plate lived in your mother's wallet. Not a credit card, a charge plate. A small metal rectangle, like a dog tag, embossed with your family's name and account number, and the store's name pressed into the metal. They felt heavy and important when you handed them over. The salesperson placed it into the machine, laid carbon paper over the slip, and pushed it through. Ka-chunk. You could feel it in your chest. Your name appeared on the receipt in purple ink that smelled like ink and paper and felt so official. It was a transaction that felt like a covenant. The store knew who you were. You were, in some meaningful way, a member. And then there was Layaway. The Layaway counter was usually hidden somewhere in the back, with metal shelves full of brown paper-wrapped packages and little tags tied on with string. Your parents went in every Friday to put $5 or $10 on it. School clothes, a winter coat, maybe something for Christmas they did not want you to see. There was something so physical about it. Envelopes of cash, handwritten receipts, the stamp coming down on the paper. Not like clicking a button on a screen. There was a ritual to paying for things, and the ritual mattered because the thing you were paying for mattered. And you were paying for it in a building that mattered, in your city's store. The salesperson knew your mother. Not every department in every store, but in the departments where she shopped regularly, gloves perhaps, or fabric, or the women's coat section, there was someone who recognized her, who pulled things aside, who said, "I thought of you when this came in." That sentence has essentially left American retail. The store was thinking of you. When you bought a gift, they wrapped it at the gift wrapping counter, not in generic paper, in that store's paper, specific to the building. The box had the store's name on the lid. When the recipient opened it, before they even saw the gift, they knew where it came from, and that information carried meaning. It said, someone went to the effort. Someone chose that store. Someone thought this purchase should be wrapped in the name of the best place in the city. At Christmas, the windows on the street level became something else entirely. Not advertisements. Stories. Mechanical displays, with moving figures and elaborate scenes, drew crowds of people who had no intention of going inside. Families walked downtown specifically to see the windows. Children pressed against the glass. Parents explained what was happening in each panel. It was public theater, free to everyone, because the store believed it owed something to the city where it lived. That belief is harder to find now. There were floors you did not visit often. The toy department was a destination. Not the whole store, the toy department, one floor, usually near the top, where the ceiling felt lower and the light was warmer, and there were things arranged at exactly the height of a child's eyes. You were not brought there to spend money necessarily. You were brought there to want things, to learn what wanting felt like, to understand that the world held more than you currently possessed and that some of it was magnificent. The furniture floor was quieter. Adults sat in chairs and tested sofas. The carpet was different up there, thicker. The salespeople moved more slowly. There was a kind of permission to take your time. And then there was the lunch counter, or the tea room, or wherever your particular store put its restaurant. This was the pause in the middle of the day, the reason a shopping trip became an event. You sat down. The things you were carrying were placed beside you. Someone brought you something warm to drink. You looked out the window, or you looked at the other tables, other families, other women in good coats with good bags, taking their own pause in the middle of their own Saturday. Hot cocoa, sugar cookies, and that warm gravy from the tea room. And it felt like you were part of something, a city doing what cities do, people being together in a particular place in a particular way. That feeling had a geography. It was tied to where you were, and where you were had a name. Somewhere in your city right now, there is a building that used to be something. Maybe you can still see the ghost of it. The architecture is wrong for whatever is inside now. The ceilings are too high. The escalators are still there, but they move differently, reprogrammed, rebranded, indifferent to the history in their bones. Or the building is gone entirely, taken down decades ago, and there is only the space where it was, a parking structure or a CVS or nothing. If you are old enough to remember, you probably do not walk past that space without thinking about it. Not with bitterness necessarily, with something more complicated. The way you think about a person you loved who is not there anymore. You do not mourn them in the abstract. You mourn the specific things, the way they smelled, the particular sound of their voice on the phone, the detail that was only theirs. The memory is not just department store as a category. It is that store, in that building, in your city. On that particular Saturday when you were 8 years old, and the air smelled like the cosmetics counter, and the elevator operator smiled at you and asked which floor, and you said the toy department, and he pulled the gate closed, and up you went. That detail, that operator, that sound, that is what is gone. That is what they renamed. Something changed. For years, companies changed hands behind the scenes. But the name over the door still belonged to your city. New owners came and went. The stores kept their names. They kept their restaurants. They kept their sense of place. Then they tested how much of your city's identity they could strip away without a revolt. First, they added Macy's to the end of the old names. Riches became Riches Macy's. Burdines became Burdines Macy's. The Bon Marché in Seattle, which had been part of that city since 1890, became Bon Macy's. Then by March 2005, the old names disappeared entirely. 5 names erased in a single morning. And nobody on a national level noticed, because the biggest names hadn't been touched yet. Then in 2005, Federated Department Stores acquired May Department Stores Company for $11 billion. In a single transaction, they controlled most of what remained: Kaufmann's, Filene's, Foley's, Meyer and Frank, Famous Bar, Strawbridge's, and Marshall Field's. The decision came quickly. All of it. Every regional name, every local clock, every store that had ever told its city that it was specifically theirs, would become Macy's. These are forgotten department stores now, not because people forgot them, but because one company erased their names. To the people in charge, Hudson's and Fields and Burdines were not heirlooms. They were inefficiencies. It made sense on paper. It felt like vandalism in real life. Chicago found out in September 2005 when the announcement was made. The reaction was not neutral. An unscientific online poll run by the Chicago Tribune asked readers whether they would be less likely to shop at Marshall Field's if the name changed to Macy's. More than 14,000 people responded within hours. 96% said yes. Not 7%, not 30%, 96%. A group called Fields Fans Chicago formed almost immediately. They organized a petition. They picketed. They showed up at Macy's shareholders' meetings. They handed out leaflets, over 300,000 leaflets, outside the State Street store for years after the change. Not because they had nothing better to do, because they felt that something had been taken from the city without anyone asking the city whether it was all right to take it. Buttons appeared all over downtown. Keep it Fields. People wore them to work. Roger Ebert, Chicago's own, the film critic who spoke for the city when the city needed a voice, wrote an editorial. "Don't mess with Chicago," he wrote. "Don't mess with the name Marshall Field's. You will generate rage beyond your wildest nightmares." The CEO's response was measured. Internal research showed that 2/3 of those surveyed felt neutral to positive about the name change. Largely neutral, he specified. Largely neutral. On September 9, 2006, Macy's Red Star replaced the Marshall Field's signature on every store. More than 400 stores across America changed their names that single day. The green clock on State Street remained. Macy's kept the architecture, kept the walnut room, kept the building. But the name was gone. Marshall Field's became Macy's. 153 years. Survived the Great Chicago Fire. Did not survive the 2005 acquisition of May Department Stores. May department stores had valued the Marshall Field's trade name at $419 million in its final annual report, nearly $500 million. For a name. They killed it anyway. People gathered under the clock that day. Some of them cried. They had signs. They had their Field's charge cards. They stood on State Street and they said, "This is not Macy's. This is Marshall Field's. This is ours." They came back on the anniversary. And the anniversary after that. And the one after that. For years. Just to stand under the clock where the name used to be. Just to remember that something had been there. That it had mattered. That people had been thought of in that building, in that city, for a very long time. There are people in Chicago who still have not set foot in that store since September 2006. It will always be Field's to them. Until they die. If that was your store too, if you had a name that belonged to your city, subscribe. This channel remembers what they erased. And tell me below, the store, the city, and the one thing only your store had. Across 2005 and 2006, 16 regional names representing centuries of combined history were erased. The Bon Marché in Seattle, Burdines in Miami, Kaufmann's in Pittsburgh, Rich's in Atlanta, Foley's in Houston, Meyer and Frank in Portland, Feline's in Boston, Famous Bar in St. Louis. In 4 out of 5 of those cities, shoppers said they stopped going. All of it became one thing. The same thing, everywhere the same. But the buildings remember. The height of those ceilings was not an accident. The brass of those door handles was not arbitrary. Someone made decisions about what kind of place this should be, what it should feel like, what it should say to the city around it. And those decisions are still there, in the stone and the steel and the staircases, even when the name above the door says something else entirely. The name belonged to you, to your city, to your specific Saturday in your specific life. They changed the name. They could not change that. Share this with someone who would know exactly which clock you are talking about, which elevator, which salad on which floor. They will know. Next time, a store where you did not browse. You wrote a number on a slip of paper and waited for a wall to open up and give you exactly what you asked for. That store is almost entirely forgotten now. We are going to remember it.